Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another fascinating career.
Absolutely. Should be an interesting one.
Today we're looking at Pam Bondi, a name you've probably heard a lot recently, especially with her nomination as U.S. Attorney General.
Her career's been anything but simple.
A mix of big achievements and some pretty public controversies.
Yeah, she's definitely been in the spotlight.
We'll unpack it all, starting from her early days as a prosecutor in Florida.
Right. Bondi began as an assistant state attorney in Hillsborough County.
And she built a reputation for being, well, pretty tough on crime.
Exactly. That emphasis on law and order became a key part of her platform when she ran for Florida Attorney General in 2010.
And won.
And won, yeah. Her connections within the Republican Party were important for her rise, too.
Showing she was already a pretty savvy political operator.
Definitely.
So let's get into her time as Florida Attorney General from 2011 to 2019.
Marked by both successes, some notable ones, and some big controversies.
On the one hand, she got a lot of praise for her work fighting human trafficking.
And tackling the opioid epidemic.
Issues that resonated with a lot of people across the political spectrum.
For sure.
But then there are those controversies we mentioned.
They definitely shape public perception of her.
The first, and maybe the one that's had the most lasting impact, is the Trump University donation scandal.
Happened back in 2013. Bondi received a $25,000 donation from the Trump Foundation for her campaign.
And then shortly after, she decided not to investigate allegations of fraud against Trump University.
The timing was definitely, let's say, questionable. Critics immediately saw it as a conflict of interest.
Arguing the donation influenced her decision.
Absolutely. Led to huge public backlash. The Trump Foundation even ended up being penalized by the IRS for improper use of charitable funds.
Bondi has always denied any wrongdoing, but it cast a long shadow.
For sure.
Another issue that really defined her time as Attorney General was her stance on same-sex marriage.
Very vocal opponent.
She went so far as to defend Florida's ban on same-sex marriage in court.
Her argument was that allowing same-sex marriage would harm the state.
Which obviously drew a lot of criticism from LGBTQ plus advocates.
Became a real focal point.
And beyond same-sex marriage, throughout her time in office, accusations of favoritism towards corporate interests kept coming up.
Critics pointed to her decisions not to investigate certain large corporations despite allegations of wrongdoing.
Suggesting campaign donations and relationships with these companies might play a role.
That perception of corporate favoritism, combined with the whole Trump University controversy, really led a lot of people to question Bondi's impartiality.
Whether she was really acting in the best interests of the public.
Right, a question that followed her even after she left office, and when she transitioned into lobbying, it really raised some questions.
She joined Ballard Partners,
representing a range of clients.
Including foreign governments like Qatar and Kuwait.
Which, yeah, seemed to go against that America First idea she'd talked about before.
People were wondering how a former state attorney general could do that.
Her work for Qatar was focused on PR, advising them on how to improve their image in the U.S.
But her work with Kuwait, that got more complicated.
It required her to register as a foreign agent.
Under FIARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act.
Right, which is designed to make sure those lobbying activities are transparent. Anyone working on behalf of foreign governments has to register with the Justice Department and disclose what they're doing.
And that registration, of course, it gave more fuel to her critics.
You saw it as putting personal gain ahead of ethics.
Her relationship with Donald Trump, it didn't end when she left the Attorney General's office.
No, it actually deepened while he was president.
She became one of his most vocal allies.
Part of his defense team during his first impeachment trial in 2020.
And then a spokesperson for his re-election campaign.
Defending him very publicly throughout.
And a lot of people saw that as a clear conflict of interest, given their past associations.
It certainly solidified her image as a strong, partisan figure within the Republican Party.
But it wasn't just her political ties that came under fire.
There was also criticism about her handling of certain settlements while she was Attorney General.
Especially those related to the opioid epidemic.
Her role in those settlements with pharmaceutical companies was seen by some as too lenient.
The settlements didn't do enough to hold those companies accountable for the opioid crisis.
Right, and some people thought her actions might have been influenced by industry interests, given those past accusations of corporate favoritism.
There was scrutiny around a hurricane relief charity, too, after Hurricane Michael in 2018.
Reports showed only a small amount of the money raised actually went to the people in need.
Raising questions about transparency and how effectively the charity was managed under Bondi's watch.
So you have these controversies on top of everything else, adding even more complexity to Bondi's record.
Leading to more debate about her judgment and her accountability.
And now, of course, she's been nominated by President-elect Trump for U.S. Attorney General.
Bringing her back into the national spotlight.
And bringing all that past debate back to...
Critics are saying those controversies, especially the potential conflicts of interest and that idea of corporate influence, should disqualify her.
They're concerned about whether she could really be impartial as the country's top law enforcement officer.
Given those close ties to powerful figures like Trump.
On the other hand, her supporters see her as a strong voice for conservative values.
With a track record of upholding the law and advancing those Republican priorities.
They believe her experience as Florida Attorney General makes her a good fit for this role.
It really highlights how divided the country is.
And how much scrutiny there is on anyone seeking a high-profile government position.
Bondi's career is complex.
A mix of achievements and controversies.
And voters and policymakers have to consider both.
The big question is whether those past actions will overshadow her future.
Can she be an effective U.S. Attorney General?
Or will her history prevent her from doing the job impartially?
That's going to be debated a lot as her nomination process goes forward. Now, before we talk about her time with the America First Policy Institute, let's step back for a second.
Okay.
How much weight should past controversies have when we're looking at someone for a position like this?
It's a tough question.
It goes beyond just Pam Bondi. It's about how we judge someone's character, their judgment, their ability to serve the public.
Exactly.
Especially when they're seeking a powerful position.
It's not easy. But with Bondi, we have to ask if her commitment to certain ideologies, to certain people, might stop her from being impartial when upholding the law.
And that brings us to her work with the America First Policy Institute, or AFPI as it's often called.
Right. This gives us more insight into her political beliefs and what she might do as Attorney General.
AFPI was founded in 2021.
It's a nonprofit think tank that promotes policies aligned with Trump's America First agenda.
It's a platform for former Trump administration officials to keep advocating for their vision.
And Bondi had a leadership role there after her lobbying career.
It shows how closely she's aligned with those America First ideas.
It gave her a way to stay involved in conservative policy discussions and maintain her influence.
It also reinforces her connection to that part of the Republican Party, the Trump wing.
Which is hard to ignore when considering her nomination.
By looking at her role with AFPI, we can better understand what she thinks is important and how she might govern.
Especially if she's confirmed for this position.
Now remember, this appointment has to be confirmed by the Senate.
And those hearings are likely to be pretty heated.
With people on both sides arguing about whether she's qualified.
The Senate will have to balance her experience as Florida Attorney General against those ethical concerns.
It's a big decision, with consequences for the Justice Department and law enforcement in the U.S.
No matter what happens, this nomination has started a conversation about political loyalty versus qualifications.
What should matter most when someone is appointed to such an important role?
It also makes us think about the role of ideology in our legal system.
How much should someone's personal beliefs affect their decisions if they're supposed to be upholding the law?
Bondi's career, with its successes and controversies, is a good example of these issues.
It shows how ideology, power, and public service are all connected in American politics.
Especially when we're talking about high-level government appointments.
It reminds us that we need to carefully examine anyone who's nominated for a position with so much responsibility.
The stakes are high.
The decisions made now will affect law enforcement for years to come. Her career, it's like a roadmap of American law and politics in a way.
From prosecutor to potentially the top law enforcement officer in the country. It really makes you think about what we value in those positions.
This whole nomination, it brings up the question of political loyalty. How much does that matter compared to qualifications?
And it forces us to look back at her past, all those actions and connections. It raises some big ethical questions about transparency and accountability.
As we move forward with these hearings, it's important to have real discussions about whether she's the right person for the job.
We can't ignore her whole record. We have to consider both the good and the bad.
It's about ensuring that the people upholding the law, they have integrity and they're impartial.
It's on all of us to hold those in power accountable for what they do.
Pam Bondi's story, it's a reminder that the fight for justice isn't over.
And that we have to carefully consider who we choose to lead us.
Her nomination sparked a debate about what we expect from our leaders.
What qualities are most important when we're talking about the people who shape our legal system?
And as we wrap up our deep dive into Pam Bondi's career, it's clear that her story is far from finished.
It's full of lessons about power, ideology, and public service in America.
And it's up to each of us to decide where we stand on her nomination and what it all means.
What it means for the future of our country.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating career.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.